What do you know about Islam? Not what you have heard about Islam, especially not recently. Not what you have heard from Mr. Bush or Mr. Blair or Mr. Darwin or Mr. Einstein or Mr. Disney or Mr. Spielberg. Not what you've heard from the New York Times or the London Times or NBC or CNN. No. What do you really know about Islam as a fact? Because the word Islam is not an abstract terminology. It's not nebulous. It's not something that could be looked at from different perspectives and thought to be something different from different people's views. No, it's not like that. Certainly, there's a difference between a man and a father. There's something different, obviously, between a male and a man. Male is a gender and female is a gender, but a man, this is a title of responsibility. That's different. So a male that does not fulfill the responsibilities of man is not completing the mandate of birth and God. They're just a male. And the same is for a female. It's the same as Islam. Islam is a principle. Islam is a comprehensive system. Islam is a law. Islam is a legislation. Islam is a regulation, and therefore it has dimensions by which you can determine and identify it. Now, a Muslim is an individual who makes the profession that they belong to or they are attached to that system. Do you judge a system by the people who say that they are a part of it? No, you don't. And that's why they have what they call disclosures. So that if somebody works for my company and they do something wrong, my company will not be liable. Is that correct? Because I've already made a disclosure that this person does not necessarily represent our company in policy or so forth and so on. I've made a disclosure of that. Well, God has also made a disclosure that the human beings themselves, God is not indicted, and God is not imperfect, and God does not die, and God does not have the limitations, and God doesn't make mistakes, and God is not immoral, and God is not prejudiced. But some Muslims are. So we don't judge or indict a system of life by the people who claim to be that. We would not indict Jesus Christ by what Jim Jones did some years ago. We would not indict Jesus Christ by what Jeffrey Dahmer did. We will not indict Jesus Christ by what Charles Manson did. We will not indict Jesus Christ by the Oklahoma bomber. What was his name? Timothy McVeigh. Was he a Christian fundamentalist? We will not indict him. We will not call any of those people Christian fanatics, Christian terrorists. We will not say that the IRA in Ireland, that they are Christian fanatics. We don't say that. So how do we say Muslim fanatics, Islamic fundamentalists, Islamic terrorists? How do we indict a global faith of more than 1,500 years with a legislation, with principles, with dignity, with a record? How do we indict that entire faith and all the people who's with that faith and put them in some kind of classification and put on them an oxymoron? You know what that is, don't you? An oxymoron is a word that means just the opposite of what you're putting next to it. Islamic terrorist, Islamic fanatic. Those are oxymorons. A person cannot be Islamic by definition if they are fanatic. They cannot be. Because Islam is a system of peace, a system of submission and surrender to God, a system of dignity. Now, if somebody who's a Muslim doesn't act that way, if a Muslim acts as a criminal way, what are they? They're a Muslim criminal, is that correct? If a Christian doesn't act the way Jesus Christ spoke, how he lived and his message, if a Christian commits a crime, what are they? A Christian criminal. A Jewish person commits a crime, what are they? A Jewish criminal. A Buddhist, a Hindu, or anyone else that commits a crime, they are what? Criminals. But you don't indict the faith because of the criminal, do you? If that were the case, America, Great Britain, France, Germany, all the so-called advanced nations, they got more criminals wearing suits than all the criminals that are in jail. They would all be criminal governments. Now, we hear the terms Islam and Muslims quite often, and we read about Islam and Muslims in the periodicals, textbooks of colleges and universities. We hear and we see a lot of inaccurate, misleading, and purposeful misinformation through the media, and we have to admit that some of this misinformation, some of this misrepresentation, and some of this distortion has been perpetuated by Muslims themselves. We have to admit that. That is true to a certain extent. Yet, 1 out of every 5 people in this world is a Muslim. There are more than 1.4 billion Muslims in the world. We don't say 1.4 billion Arabs, Asians, Africans. We didn't say that. Because you cannot find any country in the world, and even if you discover a new country, there'll be some Muslims there. White, black, green, yellow, tall, short, male, female, poor, rich, of every ethnicity. The Muslim nation, the Muslim Brotherhood, is a global brotherhood, a global nation, and Muslims are everywhere in the world. 1 out of every 5 people in this world is a Muslim. Just like 1 out of every 5 people in this world is a Chinese. And nearly 1 out of every 5 people in this world is from the Indian continent. These are statistics that we can support. Go to your computer, do a search. Go to the encyclopedia and do a search. Go to the almanac and do a search, and you will verify this statistic. And you know everything about India, and you know everything about China. But I ask you the question, why don't you know something about Islam? You know the language of China, you know the language of India, you know the Constitution, everything can be found. People talk, you eat Chinese food, you eat Indian food. But I ask you, what do you really know about Islam? What do you know about the social, the economic, the political, the historical factors about Islam? Why don't you know about Islam? What is it that joins over 37 nations together into a brotherhood, a configuration, a common fraternity? What makes a brother in Saudi Arabia my brother, and I'm from America? And what makes my brother from Pakistan my brother? And what makes an Australian my brother? A French Muslim, a German Muslim, a Scandinavian Muslim, an English Muslim, an Indonesian Muslim. What makes them my brother? We're not the same color. We don't have the same culture. We don't speak the same language. What makes us brothers is our bond of faith. It is Islam that makes us brothers. I'm going to use the word Allah. And you know that I'm not speaking of the Muslim God. I'm speaking of the creator of the heavens and earth, your Lord and my Lord. The same God of Moses and Abraham and Jacob and the tribes and John the Baptist and Jesus Christ and the Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessing be upon him. The word Islam is derived from the word salama. Salama means to be at peace. It also means safety. It also means security. Therefore, a Muslim is a person that surrenders to whom? Allah. A Muslim is a person that submits and obeys the law of whom? Allah, Almighty God. And through this submission obtains peace for themselves. You see, the formula is very simple. When I surrender to the law, when I conform to the law and the legislation which is intended for me, that means that is my natural disposition. Therefore, I become what? A conformist. I am in order. I am in harmony. And by being in order and harmony, the things I'm supposed to receive comes to me. So it's natural to be a Muslim. It's unnatural not to be.